Good evening, everyone. I'd like to thank you all for coming to the Redistricting Committee meeting this evening, and I'd like to start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to do the flag. I'd like to introduce the committee members and staff this evening. Martine Valdez, Lupe Cardenas, Felix Vargas, Brett Ochoa, who is not here, James Alford, who is not here, and I'm Cindy Hayes, and the staff this evening is Michael Morgan and Ashley Hayen. I'd like to turn it over to Keith at this point.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. We appreciate your time and being here. Let me just give a few introductory kind of background comments as we get into the substance. I hope to be very brief so that we can actually get into some of the detail of what I know you're here for. Some time ago, the Franklin County Commissioners authorized the creation of a committee to provide data back to them regarding the county commissioner districts and how they are chosen. Up on the screen is what the current districts look like in pink, green, and blue, and you can see that the pink, which is District 1, is geographically very small. Districts 2 and 3 are geographically very large. In the time that we have, the commissioners looked at this issue, we have been challenged through legal proceedings to indicate that our current districts are not properly representing minority voters in Franklin County. And I would imagine most of you are pretty well aware of the nature of that litigation and kind of where that stands. We're still in the midst of that. We have some legal processes to go through, but ultimately the end result of that litigation will be a Superior Court judge making a determination upon commissioner districts and what they will look like for the next round of elections. I won't go into all of the legal details. That's not really necessary for tonight's purposes. The committee that has been put together has been organized from a number of different organizations. Each of the county commissioners were to appoint someone from the Franklin County community to the committee. We asked the Pasco Chamber of Commerce and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce to provide one individual each, the Farm Bureau and the Franklin County Cattle Association to provide appointments to the committee. Some of those appointments have not, in a sense, been finalized in that their participants have not been able to join us. The committee was organized back in May, but because of some of the issues around litigation was delayed in starting. The committee has really only had 2 meetings. Those were in-person working staff kinds of meetings to come up with some preliminary information for the purposes of these public hearings that we are now holding. We're doing one here tonight. Tomorrow night we will be in Connell, and Thursday night we'll be in Mesa to have a similar public opportunity to participate. So the task of the committee was to do really one thing. It was to gather input from the community and prepare suggested maps for the commissioners. At the end of the day, the commissioners decide what those district maps will look like. Based on input from this committee, they will cast a vote, and then that will be taken forward to the Superior Court as a proffering of the Franklin County's redistricting plan. There are some legal requirements under the Washington State Voting Rights Act that we are required to follow. And just in a general sense, I'll describe those a little bit. Each district shall consist of a geographically contiguous area. That just simply means that all of an individual district has to be connected geographically. We can't split those districts so that there's a different district in between some of those divisions. If that makes sense, I think that makes sense. But the law requires them to be geographically contiguous. To the extent feasible, the district boundaries shall coincide with existing recognized natural boundaries and shall, to the extent possible, preserve existing communities of related and mutual interest. That's really the challenging one, but that's where we spend most of our time. Naturally occurring boundaries may be rivers or mountain ranges or highways. Major thoroughfares can be used as natural boundaries. To the extent possible, preserving existing communities of related and mutual interest. That means you typically are looking for neighborhoods that are similarly situated. Industrial area, sometimes in a rural Franklin County, doesn't really make that possible because there's no population. There's right down the south end of the green area. It doesn't have very many people in it, but it covers a pretty large geographic area. So you have to pay attention to making sure that you're not splitting up related and mutual interests. The district boundaries may not be drawn or maintained in a manner that creates or perpetuates the dilution of the votes of the members of a protected class or classes. Franklin County is fairly homogeneous. There is a greater concentration of Latino voters in the eastern side of the city of Pasco in the county elections, and that is a point of issue in the nation that we are involved in. But this committee is tasked with recognizing that there are concentrations of certain parts of the county, and we cannot intentionally split those up to create a situation where they are not properly represented or have adequate representation at the polls when they go get through an election. And then there's some other more legalistic kinds of things related to the census and the impact upon elections. I won't necessarily go through those tonight because that's kind of besides the point. So with that, I would like to maybe offer any committee members a moment to speak or make any introductory comments that they have. You're not required to, but if you'd like to, I want to make sure that you've got adequate time to address the group. And if when we're ready, we'll kind of jump into some of the what the map we think is going to look like. Mr. Vargas.
Thank you, Keith. I want to take a moment just to thank Mr. Johnson and the staff of the county who have very judiciously and professionally guided us on the process here. So I join my fellow committee members in trying to define this important task. I also want to express appreciation to the community members who are here tonight who've taken interest in the electoral process and system here in Franklin County. Your input is very important to this committee. I would never underestimate that. In a situation like this where we're tasked with reviewing the present map, looking at the census data, looking at the way precincts are set up, and making some determination about what is correct in accordance with Washington state law, there's always some potential for misunderstanding. It's very easy for any one of us here to say, well, wait a minute, this is a game about to determine winners and losers. This is what this exercise is all about. Speaking for myself, that is not the case. We're not picking winners. We should not pick winners. We should not pick losers. We should follow the law. We should level the playing field so that every citizen, every voter has an equal opportunity to elect his or her candidate to be commissioner. This is what it's all about. So our task is to come up with recommendations on new maps because clearly the present one doesn't fit the bill. It does not meet the letter of the law. In particular, it discriminates against communities of interest here. it really makes it difficult for communities of interest to be preserved. And secondly, there is a great delusion of voters. There's something called racially polarized voting. So any new map that we come up with has to be measured against the criteria that was outlined by Mr. Johnson. You know, are they reasonably compact? Are they geographically contiguous? Do you have natural existing borders, boundaries? Do you have preservation of communities of interest? And are you diluting voters? If you measure against this criteria, you're able to make some kind of assessment about whether that map is really the correct map to offer as a recommendation. So that we will do with your input and your comments tonight. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Okay. So on the map that we have up in front is the current districts, and the committee is not required or expected to simply modify these three districts. They, on the east side of District 1 and the west side of District 3, and the very southern tip of, excuse me, I always confuse my 2 and 3. District 1 is pink, District 2 is green, and District 3 is blue. But this border along the east and southeast corner of those is where we recognize that there's a challenge in communities of interest. This part of the city of Pasco is predominantly Hispanic. We have data to support that from the U.S. Census Bureau. That is one reason that we feel like there's a essential change made to this area. And so that's kind of where the start of the focus was. We also know that there's a great deal of growth in northwest Pasco, which is the communities of interest on both sides of Highway 182 are more similarly situated. And so it seems to make some sense to push this east-west boundary between 1 and 2 further to the west and perhaps further to the north to include those communities of interest. One of the key features that we have to do is make sure that the three boundaries are roughly, not so roughly, almost precisely the same in number. The average population that target we're shooting for is 32,250. We're really close to that with some proposals that you'll hear about tonight, but it moves this east-west boundary further west and moves this southern-northern boundary between districts 1 and 3 further north. That achieves the balancing of the districts in terms of the numbers of population within each district. As I said, that the committee has met a couple of times. They have looked at this in and out, make me dizzy. There's this possibility of a very large northern county district, and I'm going to zoom in here to the boundary between 1 and 2. Here we are. So as you can see, it cleaned up this east-west border between districts 1 and 3 by making 395 essentially the dividing line. That is a natural boundary. There is part of a precinct on either side of 395 right here as it joins the freeway. That's why you see District 2 or the green color on both sides of 395 right at that point. We are not allowed to divide precincts, and there's current precinct number 15 that's on both sides of that part of the freeway. So we included all of District 15 in, or excuse me, Precinct 15 into District 2. Then, in order to capture the right number of population, that required us to move District 1's northern boundary onto the other side of Highway 182, comes up to Road 36, to Burden, then jumps over to Road 68, goes up to Burns, and then follows over, jogs around a precinct, coming eventually over to the river, with the Columbia River being the southern border of that one. District 2, again, splitting basically at 395, comes along the river, up the Snake River to Highway 12, captures all of that area south of Highway 12. And then what that does is creates a very large, geographically, northern district to include all of the rest of northern Franklin County. That would be District 3. Now, when we do that, you'll notice those if you can see those numbers on there, Commissioner District 1 would have 32,922 in population. District 2, 31,967, and District 3, 31,860. I mentioned a moment ago that our target was 32,250, so that's really quite close. There's a slight variation, but not enough to disqualify the plan. So that's one proposal. The second proposal that the committee is considering cleans up the east-west boundary between, I'm not sure that's right. We had some District 1 over on this other side. Yeah. The way I'm seeing that, I don't think that's correct. We're going to get to a public comment period. These are not well, we're getting to that. I don't think this map of option 2 is accurate. This had some additional precincts that were on the east side of 395 being considered. So I'm not going to push that map forward. We're going to stay with option 1 for the moment. We do want to get to public comments. I'd like to hear from the public as to what they would like to see in these maps. Cindy, I'll turn it back to you if you want to have people come to the microphone and speak. We would ask that you keep your comments brief. It looks like everybody would have adequate time to take a couple of minutes. If you wanted 3 minutes of time, if it requires more time than that, then we'll ask you to maybe step back and let others speak, and then you can come back up again once everybody's had an opportunity that wants to speak. So with that, yeah, option 2 is just, like Michael just said, is a variation of option 1. These are the things that the committee is considering. I don't want to suggest that these are final in any way. The purpose of this process is to have public input, and the committee will then only make a map rendering that they give to the county commissioners after they've heard public input. Where did the map come from? Well, we are responsible for capturing the data from the input that we received from the committee. No, the only map that we sent them before they met was the map that we currently have in place.
Can we?
Oh, the UCLA Voting Rights Group is the plaintiff in the litigation. They have I'm going to disagree with your,
So
Yeah,
right
can
now,
we-
we have a gentleman approaching the podium, so let's let
George
him speak.
Dockstetter, Self Landing Road, Pasco. I've been a resident here for 52 years and a realtor for, I guess maybe 46 years. And, we're all worried about the Latino vote. What's the percentage of Latinos in the pink district right now? Can you answer that question?
in District 1, in the current District 1,
Yes.
that data would be available, but I don't have it in front of me.
Because I think you're going to be surprised at the number of Latinos that are spread throughout the county. They're not just concentrated in the green area on that map. And the other question or point I want to bring to the redistricting committee, Keith, you can answer this question. What percentage of the county budget spent on roads in the sheriff's department?
George, I don't have that information with me.
What, 70%?
On which part of the budget? The current expense part of the budget? The total
current
budget?
Total budget. How much is spent in the
Yeah.
sheriff's department, the road department?
That would require a calculation that I don't have in front of me.
That's probably what, 60, 70%?
Yeah, probably.
Okay, then that money is spent on people outside of the city limits. That's where the majority of our budget goes. It doesn't go down there to West Pasco or East Pasco. The sheriff's department and the road department are our biggest expenses, probably along with the Benton Franklin Health Department. And the beneficiaries of that are people that live out in the county. I think you need a little more fair representation out in the county instead of having two of them concentrated in the city, because they don't care about the money being spent on the sheriff's department or the road department. You're going to get into the deal every time they're short. They're going to rob the road department or the sheriff's department to make up for any shortfalls and leave the citizens of the county hanging high and dry. So I'd love to see a little bit more representation. Move the green area over and concentrate let the pink go up out in the county a ways, so some of the county residents can have somebody to talk to. Right now, you can't go talk to Brad Peck if you live out in the county, because he doesn't give a crap about you. And we're going to end up with two of them that don't care. So I'd love to see a little bit different geographic, and the pink area, split it up out into the blue area so that at least there's a chance for two votes. And the other thing I'd like to see, I don't mind district only voting in the primary, but the majority of the money, like I said, is spent out in the county. I like to see county-wide voting in the final ballot. Thank you for your time.
So first, how many of you actually have received the demographics for each precinct? And I'm talking about the ethnicity of voters in, could we get your name, please? Sorry, LaWanda Hatch, thank you. Do we know, have you been given that information, Redistricting Commission, to be able to draw any map? Lupe?
No.
You haven't received any demographics. So how do we have even one map today? I know for a fact that the only map that this board has received is what I call the UCLA PEC map. Why do I call it the UCLA PEC map? Because it's identical to one of the maps that PEC had employees at the county draw up. And that's the only information that they've been given. and yet you're here presenting maps. You're supposed to be hearing from the people, not telling us what to do. You're going to hear from the people because it's supposed to be of the people, for the people, by the people. And that means all of Franklin County. We are 54.6% Latino. The majority, I'm actually a minority in Franklin County. I just want to point that out. The other thing that I wanted to kind of go on about also is that Mr. Johnson, I feel like you're doing all the talking. It should be the board, the commission. I feel like you are micromanaging them. And you are supposed to be there to give them anything that they ask for, not micromanage them. I feel like this process has been corrupted by that. And I think that you should recuse yourself and have somebody else that speaks to the chair of this board and gives her whatever it is that the board requests as far as data. They should have the demographics of every precinct long ago. That information was on the census. The other thing is, I agree with Mr. Doctor. My husband said the same exact thing. If the Latinos feel, and if the demographics show that, yes, we should give them that commission district. But then you take Peck districts, which is on the UCLA Peck map, you split it in half and go right up the county. Now, and you, of course, you have to make sure you don't cut the precincts up, and you have to look at the populace. But we need to know the demographics of every precinct throughout Franklin County for this board to be able to do the job that they need to do legally. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Hello there. For the record, my name is Jeffrey Robinson. I am a darn proud resident of West Nixon Street over in the Peck District, as my friend just called it. Before I begin, I make two requests. One, can we tamp down on people when they're making personal attacks against public officials? Much as I would love to explain the many disagreements I have with Commissioner Didier, this is not the appropriate place or forum to do that. Second of all, we do have decorum, and Keith Johnson has given no indication that he is anything other than a devoted public servant. It is beneath the dignity of this assembly to be doing things like insulting a public official who by law cannot defend himself. Now, let's get to the maps and the meat of the issue. The fact of the matter is that the UCLA proposal that you have been given is the most legally sound one. You might be able to tweak it a little bit, but the reality is we need to be 2 districts in Pasco. Everything outside of Pasco is its own district. I understand some people don't like that, but that is the law. That is where the population is concentrated. That is where most of the tax money coming into this county is actually coming from, is the city of Pasco. The hatred and stigma that people greet the city of Pasco, and the idea that the city of Pasco, in demanding its right to be fairly and equitably represented, the stigma that that Latinx people are treated with when they are asking for fair representation is atrocious. We can and we must do better. I ask you, please, go with the UCLA map or get as close to it as you possibly can. Now's the time to do the right thing. Now's the time to show people who we really are as Franklin County. And we are a loving and welcoming county that wants fair and equitable districts. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vigor Angel, and I've been in Tri-Cities a long time. I work in Pasco. I put a lot of money into the development in Pasco. I like this map, and I also think it's not fair to have basically when the district votes, then it goes to the full Franklin County. I mean, that'd be kind of like asking us to vote for somebody for Congress and then have the rest of the west side of the state, override our vote. I think every district that votes, I'm sorry, I know it's funny for you, but okay, sorry. Thank you. So every district, they should be able to represent themselves directly and not be overridden or voted as a whole on Franklin County. Thank you.
I just want to make a point of clarification. I don't want to get in a tit for tat or debate, but so the map that's up there, we've only met twice. So we met last Thursday, and we met last night. So so we had a discussion about ways to approach redistricting, and we actually provided Keith and his staff direction. And that was the map that we came up with. Again, we're working on another one. Again, is not anything we're going to submit to anybody. We just started a discussion. There's another map that Lupe took a lead on that's different from that map, and these are two maps that were created out of conversation by the committee. It's not a map. I haven't seen actually the UCLA map. Well, that it may be like it. It was not. It didn't come from anywhere. We gave direction. Can I speak? We gave direction again at the beginning of the process, and that's what it was. So it may be similar to it. I don't know, but this was something that was created by staff. And again, Lupe was suggested another one, and I think it's up there somewhere.
Let me turn this on. I work with the mapping department. I put this map together, and I based the population numbers on population figures I got from the State Office of Financial Management, who in turn provided us with current 2020 population figures that are used in all redistricting, local and state.
Yeah, and as somebody mentioned earlier, this is not a debate. I mean, we're here to listen and take that information, the data, your feedback. So I don't like that. I just wanted to clarify that.
I wonder if I can just add that. I'm sorry. Mr. Johnson, to the best of my knowledge, we were not provided the UCL map. Is that correct?
I don't believe you.
Yeah. So if there's a misperception that UCLA or anyone else has given us a map outside of our committee, let us correct that. That is not the case. This map was developed based on our look at the census data, the precincts, and the criteria laid out in the Washington law. That's the only guidance I've seen. We don't have any other maps. This came out of our committee discussions.
north of town. I believe I heard somebody say that the only way you can legally do this is to have two districts in town, and I believe that that's a wildly inaccurate statement. Is that accurate? Or is there something
I would
legally
say
that says
that
that we
because over 80% of the county's population resides in the city limits of Pasco, I don't think it's mathematically possible to create districts that don't have a part of the city of Pasco in each of the three districts. You just can't get the numbers there if you exclude.
I was just wondering if, this is just a wild guess on my part, but if we said 395 was a line and Road 68 was a line and we did long linear districts, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way. I don't think that it's proper for us to have one commissioner that represents all of the farming community and nothing in town, and vice versa. Commissioners that represent only town and nothing out. I recognize that we have that a little bit with one district now. I just think that if we're going to redraw and we're going to go far outside of what we have now, that we really should consider doing it as much as we can so that each commissioner, doesn't matter which district, that people feel like they are represented. And so, thank you very much, and would be curious about the definition of what gerrymandering is. Thank you very much.
My name is Esteban Ortiz. I'm a proud Navy veteran, and thank you for serving, and more anything, thank you for our public official for serving. I think more than anything, the U.S. Census happens every 10 years in order for us to provide these maps, and that's where the data comes from. And I believe the growth shows that the Latino community has grown in Pasco, and to see people threatening yourself doing this great work that we appreciate it, and other individuals, that's not part of democracy, and that's not the reason I served the military. So thank you, and hopefully, we can look at the data and the growth that's happened in the great Tri-Cities.
Thank you. We still continue to need the input. So for you, keep the input, please.
Hello, my name is Ismael Mendoza, and I moved to Pasco in 2009. I am currently a student at CVC taking political science, and I'm here to support the district-based voting for the county commissioners race in both the primary and the general elections. Voters in their district should decide who their candidates are in both the primary and the general election. And I take it as a duty to answer the question of the element. Gerrymandering is to manipulate boundaries of an electoral constituency so as far to favor one class or party. Thank you.
Evening. Jake Dorsey of Pasco. I'm a bit of a nerd for these things, so I apologize in advance if I get a little too nerdy. Current districts that you see right now on the screen, District 2 is probably around 40%, 45% Latino, if I recall correctly. The other two districts are in the 30s. Could you please advance to option 1? Is that possible? Thank you so much. Commissioner District 2 is drawn there, and probably in option 2 as well, since it's only like a couple precincts difference. That's getting close to 60-odd% Latino. The other two districts, probably around 25 to 30%, if I recall correctly. That satisfies the law. That gets you everything you need. It sucks for the people in the north of the county, but this battle was lost in 2018 when the legislature passed the Voting Rights Act. Sorry, but that's the way it is. That's the legal map that would pass muster, that passed the Supreme Court. I'd go with that one. Thanks.
So do you feel that that gentleman's definition of gerrymandering was fairly accurate? We feel that's fairly accurate.
If you're asking me, I think the definition means you're creating bound lines that either harm or benefit a particular group or individual, whether that's a candidate or a political party or a neighborhood or something that unfairly or illegitimately creates those boundaries.
So to draw a circle around a group of people or a candidate's district so that they have an advantage is the definition, the very definition of gerrymandering.
Well, gerrymandering, as you're probably thinking of it then, is really a legal term. The Voting Rights Act does clearly state that historically minority communities have been disadvantaged, and counties have an obligation to create commissioner districts that overcome the disadvantage. I can see at a rhetorical level that some might call that gerrymandering, but that is, by definition, state law is not gerrymandering. If somebody wanted to challenge the Voting Rights Act, which is being done, whether it's constitutional or legally permissible, that's probably a different matter, but the courts are going to accept districts that overcome those historically known or presented disadvantages.
So they would in fact accept this, even though the purpose of this map, as best as I've been able to understand, was drawn specifically in this way to benefit a specific group of people.
I can't assure you that the court would accept this. We think it's close to what the court would accept. We can't predict that, of course, but it does seem to meet the legal requirements.
Okay.
I wonder if I can intervene here. I don't mean to cut off the gentleman, but we can have an academic discussion all night long, but it's not going to serve the interests of this committee very much. And I say that because we want to hear, and we've heard a couple recommendations on how the line should be drawn, where we would benefit greatly from your ideas about how you see the districts being drawn and how you see your definition of boundaries being consistent with the law. That would help us tremendously. But to have an endless discussion here on definitions of gerrymandering and other related topics, I think is not the best use of our time.
I appreciate that. I was wanting a foundation to stand on so that I had an understanding, so that I could, therefore, as a public and a resident of the county, to be able to have clarity in what our foundation and where we were going from, so that then we would be able to then give what we believe was a good recommendation. So I appreciate the correction there, but that wasn't the intention, to have a endless academic discussion. Once again, thank you each for being willing to serve and recognize it's very, very challenging.
George Dockstetter again, and you'll hear from me more than this time. But I think staff needs to get the commission a hell of a lot more information. The gentleman a couple times ago said it's 80% in the green and 25% in the pink or Hispanic. I've been selling real estate, had an office in Pasco, like I said, for 46 years. And there's a hell of a lot more than 25% Hispanics west of the freeway. And I think your staff needs to get you some valuable information instead of those proposed by outside people. Thank you.
And Mike, can we give those, the second map that we come up yesterday with, so people can see it? The one I proposed? Oh, we don't have it?
I don't, Michael, your microphone's not turned on. Could you speak into the mic, please?
Believe I heard they hammered that out yesterday, so I didn't include it.
I guess for the record, just to help the audience, and we're gonna have it that says we cannot change it too much. I think we can tweak the lines a little bit. This is one, this is another one, and hopefully we can come up with another one, or maybe two more. I don't know what we can, but I guess with input. So I just wanted the other one so people can see visual. So right now, we only got one. That's what's been up there. That's one proposal. That's one proposal. If that helps the last line, let's see if the other one helps the law when we get to them graphics.
You can also add that this slideshow is available on the redistricting page as well. It's called Redistricting Options. And it can be added to and displayed publicly.
My turn? Okay. So I understand you guys are going to be going out north tomorrow and the next day for meetings. One night in Connell, one night in Mesa. Option that represents North County a lot better before you guys discuss people up north, because you're not going to be well received with either one of these maps. This is not fair at all.
I'll go on to that, and that is if the reception we get up north will be directly related to the input that the people from the north provide. We are a listening session. We're not there to dictate, to tell people how the map should be drawn. We're there to listen to ideas and recommendations. I think providing sample maps to get a discussion going can be that, only for discussion. But again, the great value of these sessions is for the public to make their own comments, their own assessments about how district boundaries should be drawn consistent with the Washington State Voting Rights Act. So again, the reception there is going to be directly proportional to the knowledge of people there on the law, the requirements, and their God-given ideas.
Yeah, again, this isn't going to be well received. And they're not on the redistricting board, redistricting committee. You know, you guys should have had a lot more input on stuff and a lot more information given to you and a lot more ideas given to you. I don't fault you guys. I fault the information that you guys have been given.
We do continue to get information, and part of these discussions is for the purpose of information. The hope is that by going out into the county, we can also get their input. This is just a very fluid piece of information based on a few meetings that we've all had to give something to start by. So yes, when we get out to the county, we'll definitely listen and take that into consideration. Absolutely.
I'm just trying to give a little advice. You better take something better than this up north, and you're not going to be well received, and you're not going to get very much constructive input from them with these two options that are already taken up. You know, it's not going to be pretty tomorrow night or the next night.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Since we have people coming up more than once, I also have a request. Would it be possible for you folks to consider maybe doing one of these listening sessions in East Pasco? I understand why this location was chosen, and I understand why the commission has limited itself to 3 public hearings, one here, one in Mesa, and one in Connell. But the reality is, if you're actually trying to get a better understanding of what the people of this county are asking for, what their expectations are, then you need to be able to get everyone in the county. And there's a substantial population of people in East Pasco that are not going to come to the west side of our city. They either may not feel comfortable, maybe their working hours don't let them. But the reality is that you should be going to majority minority neighborhoods, or you should be centralizing yourself. If 80% of the population of our county is in the city of Pasco, which we all seem to agree to, and you've got it on your website, would it not make sense to hold 2 hearings in Pasco, one on the western half, one on the eastern half, with an emphasis on making sure that anyone for whom English may not be their first spoken language has adequate services, so that they not only have the ability to understand these proceedings, but that they have the ability to communicate effectively, so that we can all, not just you folks, but all of us, hear what they have to say. We shouldn't be in the business of intentionally or unintentionally erasing voices. And as one of the biggest critics of this entire proceeding, because I do not understand the value of it, let me tell you, you are all doing a fine job. It has been a privilege to watch you work. You've definitely earned my respect for what you've been doing up here. And I think this is a learning opportunity for all of us, no matter what happens. This is not something I think any of us thought we would be doing this year, or really any year. So thank you very much for the good faith that you've shown in this hearing.
I would like to reply to that. Mr. Robinson, is that your name? Yeah.
Why, yes, it is.
Yes.
Sorry, Jeffrey Robinson.
Jeffrey. I think that's an excellent idea. Personally, we have 1/3 of the Franklin County population in Central Pasco. Why not have a listening session in Central Pasco and have it in Spanish with English interpretation? I think that would be an excellent idea, and it would give people most affected by these discussions to have a chance to provide their own input. So they can provide their ideas on what budgeting issues are, what the sheriff and roads components represent from their perspective. So I want to commend you on that recommendation.
Thank you sincerely, sir.
Hi, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Jose Mendoza. I was born here in Pasco, and I grew up my entire life here in East Pasco is where I grew up. I live in West Pasco now, and essentially it looks like I would be in the purple map right now. I come to speak on behalf of my dad. My dad, lives in the green district right now, but he works in the purple district. He is a part of a group of people like him and many like him that work in northern Pasco and a lot of the farms, but they live in East Pasco. And many of these people feel disenfranchised. Many of these people feel some type of resentment to the people that run things. And while there might be a workforce right now that's complacent, the generation of people or basically children that are coming up, they're a little bit more aware of some things on some political processes, and they're not so complacent, and they're not so willing to go work some jobs where they're not feeling respected, where they're not feeling appreciated for what they're doing, especially if this has hurt their family heritage. So I come to say, please, when you look at your maps, look at them and consider that people live in one area, but they live here, but they work in these other strips of land. So you may segregate them by population, but that's not where they live. That's not where they spend their time. So people make a decision in this district, and then these people always have to live in those conditions. I don't know if this makes entire sense, but what I'm saying, so I can get out of the way, is there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of feel for disenfranchisement, and this may result in economic downturn down the road. Thank you.
And Jose, could I ask a question? What is your feeling, or can you describe the self-franchising to you?
My response would be that people don't feel like they're being listened to with their concerns. People know that money is coming out of their paychecks for taxes. They very well know this, but they don't see benefit in the community from nicer parks, better roads. But they do see more monitoring or more policing. So when I mean disenfranchising, I mean basically these people are feeling targeted now from not being listened to.
Thank you.
Wanda Hatch. I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but if you live in the city of Pasco, you have your district-based elections for city council. So you have your district-based representative, then you have your mayor, and then you have a city council person at large. So you actually have 3 people representing you. So think about that. The roads in the city and the policing is not done with county tax dollars. That is only done with city dollars. So if you are feeling disenfranchised, that makes me feel really bad. But you should really speak to your city council about that because the county has no control over that. So just one point that I wanted to make. Anyhow, so I respect anyone that works in the fields, anyone that works for farms. I'm a farmer. My kids and I work out in the fields and the farms. And we respect people that work hard. And that's what America is about. We want you to come here and we want you to work hard and to better your life. But to say that you feel disenfranchised because Commissioner Peck's district hasn't been changed. I understand about the green, but I still don't understand how we can have any map today other than what the commissioner's districts are currently and just the raw data. Because really it should be a blank slate. If our commission has not received any data on the demographics of each precinct. So, I mean, I can't even answer that. We've heard people here today tell us, but why, I don't know, Mike, if that's your name, why they were not given that information to begin with.
Like I said, I can post some of that information later, and I can attest, at least according to this option 2 map, that Commissioner Peck's district is actually changing according to this option. It's moving a little bit north to even out the populations. And the numbers that are shown there, the population numbers, I can attest to are from the census data. And so you'll see, you know, the numbers are summed from each proposed district accordingly.
Buenas noches. Good evening. I'd like to thank you for your patience with all of us. And you have a job to do. And so I'd like to thank that you are doing this, like some said, in a really professional manner. And so that you can help us find a solution to this. My name is Gabriel Portugal. I'm a resident from Pasco since the 70s. And so this process that you're going to go through, hopefully we can learn to come in and share comments without engaging with the public, where the public is sort of like throwing arrows and then answering and then they engage. So hopefully you'll find a way to prevent that people that come and participate don't get attack or comments or engagement in the site, and then pretty soon you have another issue going on in the audience. And I know that's difficult because we all have passions and emotions, and sometimes that's difficult. So the question for me is the taxpayer, and I think someone said something about that. If you remember our history of the United States, taxation with no representation, sometimes that comes up into a lot of the Latino community that have 2/3 of the taxpayers living in the city of Pasco, and then they say, well, you know, shouldn't we have another commissioner? And that is what we're trying to do, to get representation. And so I hope that in the end, that's what is gained with the 2018 Washington Voter Rights Act, which is why we're here mainly. If it wasn't for that law, everything will be the same. So when folks come here and they are defending their positions, sometimes they mention commissioners. We are not here to defend any commissioners. I am not. Hopefully that we stay away from bringing that, because then that makes us biased. We want to leave things like they are, and then, you know, I'm here because Commissioner so-and-so is not doing a good job. Hopefully we can stay away from that, but I think it was mentioned before. So when people engage, I hope that you find a way to stop them from doing that, because I watch a couple of folks coming and attacking or saying things about the previous speaker. We're here to share with you. The Latino community has one issue, that is speaking in public. When you call them for a meeting, I'm a retired educator, so I can tell you sometimes participation is real difficult to bring from parents to schools and stuff. And they don't care about education. It's not that. It's just that speaking in publics, in reunions like that, is intimidating for a lot of folks. When you go into the northern side or central side of the county, you're going to see the differences. Latinos don't necessarily enjoy coming up and speaking in public. It's kind of difficult for us for many complex reasons. I'm not gonna. I don't really know, but I know that I experienced that. And so when you're putting these numbers together and see how many people came and spoke to you, and they're from a certain ethnic group and another ethnic, you say, well, there's very little interest because look, there's so very few in this group. Well, it's not the numbers. It's just so that you can take in consideration what I'm saying is that a lot of the Latinos are going to choose not to be here. So look at this. We have a very small group here. And even if you have in the east side, which I think is a good idea, and have it in Spanish, that may be a challenge, but I'll give you a little edge in trying to get a better picture. So I think Mr. Vargas and someone else had a good idea that because when you're here and I have to translate this into to Spanish and everything is in English, that is intimidating. Those people are barely communicating, or they have a lot of even myself. I'm a retired educator, and I make a lot of mistakes when I'm speaking. It is when you learn a new language, that is part of the process of being bilingual. So when you put all this together, you'll see the differences in speakers. But please find a way to prevent folks to speaking to each other and addressing them, you know, and trying to say, oh, you know, or answering back. We're speaking to you. We're not speaking to each of us. So when we come here and we ask for questions, yeah, that's good. But we should study the questions that we're going to ask you so that when we come up here, we're not wasting your time. And I'm hoping that you find a process to do that. And so I really thank you for the job that you're doing. I hope that we can find a solution. And yes, you're right. That's not the final map. At the end, whatever this litigation goes, we'll see what happens. But there's still a long road ahead of us. Thank you for your time and good luck.
Could I respond there, Gabriel? I'll give you, I think tomorrow, Thursday, with the meeting at Misa, I think that has a interpretation.
Yes.
So there's interpretation for people in Spanish that can go to that meeting. There will be a translator there. So I don't know if that got published. It's supposed to have been published. So okay. And then, but I think Okay, thank you. So,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe I didn't explain myself clearly. When you translate from English to Spanish, there is the intimidation. But if you translate from Spanish to English, let's say all these folks were listening to us, estamos hablando en español y tuvieran que poner atención en lo que estaba diciendo el que está hablando. ¿Qué está diciendo? ¿Se lo están traduciendo al inglés? You'll be lost or you'll be intimidated and you'll be angry at one point in time because you do not understand what's going on. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying about that you don't have the resources ready for Spanish speaking. I'm saying about the intimidation factor that needs to be in the equation here. I hope that I'm clear now. Thank you.
I misunderstood what you, so, but there will be Spanish, so, and I think it's a good idea to have one on the east side if that one needs to be done. So,
Yeah, and if you had all
that
in
goes for,
Spanish,
I'm just saying for the board, you know, we're here to listen to, for that input. We're here to listen to the input, so we come up with a map so that we all can agree.
people out there say, we're going to go to a meeting, vamos a ir a una junta que se habla puro español, qué bien, vamos a, yo puedo decir lo que quiera, lo que puedo, como digo, como hablo. That would be a factor that they will take in consideration when they attend this meeting. And I tell them, be different dynamics that you English folks that come in and say, oh, everything is in Spanish, what am I doing here? That is what I'm talking about. The intimidation factor, the linguistic, linguistically speaking, there is the intimidation factor. Thank you.
All right, first timer here. I haven't been through this, so I'm a little nervous about what I'm going to say. But I I'm all for, and I understand a lot of what has been talked, especially the intimidation factor, especially growing up here in Pasco since 1981. My mom came in '69, and I remember my stepdad when he first voted, because he, for the longest time, did not vote. He cried. Um, our community, at times, it's yeah, they're not very out here very outspoken or involved, and I think we need to do that. I think we got to take responsibility. So I'm all for. Okay, so I keep hearing that people are not getting information. So if I'm somebody speaking Spanish or somebody who's interested in being in here, how do I get this information that that's being provided? Maybe I'm ignorant to that. Or maybe there's avenues I haven't read or kept up with it. But if we're trying to reach the Latino community or our community in dividing these, and I'm all for having equity, how can I access that? Number one, and the other thing too is it being accessible in Spanish too? Because I know I work with helping the Latino community with grants and all that. How do how do they have access to all this stuff? Because we're here, and I only see a few people wanting to represent the whole Franklin County. So if we can have people here to actually share their thoughts, their voices, and what they want done, I think it would bode well for you guys, because that's what you want. You want opinions. You want to hear what the voters have to say. I don't know how to do it, but I think that's the job of everybody here, and I would like to see more people. The other thing about being, too forceful and everything, yeah, it can be intimidating, hearing people, really passionate about what they do. And I commend everybody who's passionate here. Mr. Didier, I admire Mr. Didier, actually. I grew up in the Redskins, loving the Redskins. We might differentiate on what we think, but you know what? He's a human being. I respect him that way, and I want to forward. I would like to see more dissemination of information, properly disseminated, and also, like I said, maybe I'm ignorant to what's really happening, but where do I get all this information? And if I don't know, how do what about our voters? Thank you.
Jake Dorsey again. I got told to nerd out again, so I might do that a little bit. again, I apologize. So you don't like having two Pasco city districts look like that. Okay, totally understand. So the other option would be, if you want to at least attempt to comply with the law, you have got to take District 1 and split it in two, and then send both of those districts redrawn all the way up to the north of the county, somehow absorbing all the rest. How those would look other than really big, I couldn't tell you for sure. I'm sure that you could cut precincts in several ways that you could make them look kind of slightly different. My concern would be is that you would still not comply with the law even if you cut the district that way. Those borders don't make any sense at all. I have nothing to do with the folks in the north of the county. I'm pretty sure that they would admit the same. I got nothing to do with them, and they got nothing to do with me, and that's fair. I totally understand that. And that also feeds into borders as to how the districts would look. I think it's worth mentioning that the current map as it stands right now, could we back up to show it just one more time? I know some people here are really familiar with it, but I feel like I'm talking to the wrong thing. Apologize. Thank you so much. Refresh. Okay. This is just flat illegal now. And I think that's where the frustration probably lies, is that no county could get away with borders like this anymore, and no county will if somebody goes and sues them over it. So the idea that you would take District 1, cut it in half, and make it the southern tip of two districts that would leg all the way up to the north of the county, it doesn't follow the law. It wouldn't work in the end, even if, and that has nothing to do with protected class either. We're not talking about protected class. That's surely a matter of, you have to draw borders that vaguely make sense. Like, they have to have some kind of basis in natural physical reality. Highways. Those are the things that would normally work. You can't do that if you draw those two long vertical districts in an attempt to basically give the north of the county more voice. It just doesn't follow the law. And I know that that's unfortunate for the folks in the north of the county to hear, and you know, not trying to bag on them or anything. It's support. I'd rather we give them something that they just like, and we get to leave all this behind and just move on. Thanks.
So I've read the law, and as long as the precincts are not cut in half, and you look at the population, you look at the demographics, then you can draw it any way you want. A highway is not a natural boundary. What it means by natural boundaries are waterways like rivers, oceans. You can't have an island in one commissioner district to try to make your numbers work. So a highway isn't a natural boundary, but when it talks about natural boundary, it's not talking about natural boundaries for each commissioner district unless there's a waterway or something going through it. Mostly that's for the county itself, which we are wrapped up between two rivers, the Columbia and the Snake. And so obviously, even with the proposed other map that we have, it's you're spilling out beyond highways. You can't let highways direct and call those natural boundaries, because they're not. They're man-made boundaries. They're roads. And there are, anyhow, so the only thing that makes this map illegal is, one, we know it's off demographically, And we also know it's off population-wise. So currently, there's around 28,000 in District 2, I believe around 30,000 in Commissioner District 1, and in Commissioner District 3, over 37,000. So that is why this map is not according to the law. But you can't say we've broken the law, because since we've gotten the census data, we haven't had a county election yet. So it would be like saying, okay, my tabs have expired, and someone comes and gives you a ticket, even though you haven't driven that car on the road. You can't, it's not illegal till you have an election. So yes, it's out of compliance, and before we can have an election, and before January 16th, according to the law of next year, this has to be redrawn and taken care of. Absolutely. We know it's out of compliance. We want it to be compliant. We don't want to disenfranchise any Latino voters. Understand that. We want to make sure that it's done correctly. And the only way to do that is if our commission is given all of the information that they need, which they haven't been given. That's what we are saying, and that's what our frustration is that instead of saying, okay, we're not going to present any maps proposals because our commission hasn't seen any demographics, we're going to say, we're going to keep our minds open, we're going to listen to the public, and we're not going to draw any lines or say what map we want until we know what the demographics are. Because as far as we know, maybe there's more African American in one area, and are they getting disenfranchised? So, I mean, we have to look at it as a whole, and before we start presenting any maps. That's where the frustration is. So, get the commission the information that they need so that they can do the job that we have been fighting for them to do. So, thank you.
Pamela Gadet, I would ask
Dockstetter again. I hope that you, as a commission, come up with a half a dozen options and not just one. You're supposed to come up with different options to present it to the county commissioners, and they are to pick one. So please come up with more than one or two options. There are several ways to slice this pie, and nobody should get a larger piece than anybody else. It should be as equal as you can make it, but there's more than one way to do that. Thank you for your time.
A comment on that remark. Mr. Dockstetter, it would be very helpful if you can help this committee by providing ideas of what a map should be consistent with the Washington State Voting Rights Act. If you can look at the criteria and see how you would draw the map in a way that it's equitable and consistent with that, that would be tremendously helpful to us.
I would gladly draw several of them. My understanding is you can't have more than 50% of one racial group in a district. Is that correct? What is it? What are the guidelines? We don't know what the guidelines are. Nobody's told us what they are. It's just that we're not equal.
Well, the guidelines I'm talking about are laid out in RCW 29 alpha .92.050. Voluntary changes to electoral system, new elections and districting. I mean, that's the criteria I'm looking at.
Okay,
Is there any other law?
What I'm saying is you ought to be able to come up with more than one map that's an option for the county commissioners. You could take and go up like Steve Bauman said, split the one and go up. If you're worried about it, I'll guarantee you we're over 50% Hispanic in the county. So and I didn't used to participate. And I started going to county commissioners meetings about a year and a half ago because I was tired of hearing about a bunch of stuff that I didn't think was right. So I went and spoke my piece, and everybody's got that right. So, I mean, they should be here to speak. This is a decent time. It's late for me. In fact, it's already past my bedtime. But I've got the opportunity to come here because I still work and I appreciate the evening meetings. I think the county commissioners ought to have every meeting in the evening. But there's more than one way to slice this thing, and I hope you present several options. And I'll gladly draw some maps. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Kennedy. I'm a resident of Pasco. And I'm not going to reiterate some of the points that have been made tonight, but to add one, which I think this committee should use to evaluate their maps, and that's compactness. A district should be compact. And I know that courts use that criteria to evaluate whether a district is constitutionally drawn. I know that the Pasco School District is using that criteria, among others, to evaluate their maps. They're currently going through a redistricting process. And the current map, the 3 districts there, they're not compact. And the map that is the most compact, districts that are drawn that are most compact, is the one that was shown previously, which is also the UCLA map. So as this committee evaluates their criteria for drawing their maps, I would hope that one of them is, are the 3 districts as compact as possible? Thank you.
Again, I just want to point out that it's not the UCLA map. It may look like it, but it was something created out of the very first meeting that we had last Thursday. Okay. I have not seen the UCLA map. I mean, it may look like it may be exactly like it, but it was created by staff from a discussion that the 4 of us had. I have never seen that map. That's all. I mean, like I said, it may be exactly like it, but it was something that we 4 discussed, and yeah.
Did you say staff drew the map? Because staff is not supposed to be drawing the map.
We gave them direction. They didn't go off and write it on. They said, we gave them direction.
Okay, so who was it that presented, who gave the direction for that first map? The one that looks like UCLA, was it you and Mr. Vargas?
All 4 of us were in that
Because
room.
this is quite interesting that that's exactly the map, one of the maps that Commissioner Peck had drawn up by the staff.
I said, I've never seen it. We had a discussion.
It was in the
of us.
newspaper too.
I haven't seen it. Like I said, you know, Lupe was there. We gave direction, and that's it. And then, like I said, the one that he suggested is not up there. There was a mistake, I think, that was made by staff, and I hope Lupe works with staff so that we have that by tomorrow. The one that he suggested,
Yeah,
which is different from this one.
it would be respectful that we could see Guadalupe.
I think there was a misunderstanding, but he came up with a different one that is not on there, and that we should have it there by tomorrow.
But even the truth be told, we do need to know the demographics, correct? Because you can say something and we could talk in grand, statements that, there's 80% here or 25% here or whatever, but unless we actually have the factual data, we're just kind of talking around in circles. So I want to see the data. I should think that the commission, before they could really present any map, would know how many Latinos are in precinct 8, how many Latinos are in precinct 12, right? Wouldn't that be important to be compliant with the law? And I do understand about compactness, but compactness just means that it's continuous, that it's not going off in a long arm some way. This actually is a compact map, but compact doesn't mean small. So I just think that should be clarified because I've read RCW 29A and all of that. So I do understand the law, but I just think for us to make sure that we don't get it challenged in court is that that everybody understands the demographics. So I could come up with a map, I could tell you, but I wouldn't want to until I knew the demographics of each precinct.
Ms. Hatch, if you read the law, then you looked at 3 point, subparagraph A, which, as important as the demographic data is, and we made that point tonight, and I think we're going to get it, and that's an important consideration. The law doesn't talk about demographic, the number of Latinos per district. It simply talks about each district being as reasonably equal in population. So,
but
that's what we have to go by. As important as the other is, it is not written in the law.
But it is written that we have to make sure that nobody's vote is watered down, right? So to be able to do that, you have to know the demographics of each precinct, because otherwise you could make something that looks compact, but now you've written out a precinct 12, which maybe was 80% Latino, you see? Or what about Mesa and Connell? How many Latinos are up there? They're being disenfranchised if they're cut off. So that's why all of the data is vital for you to do the job, and really why I'm confused that we're seeing any map without you being able to look at that.
But part of the complexity of all of this is that in looking at population, you look at existing communities of related or mutual interest, and it is very possible that you have Latinos living in Central Pasco who have nothing in common with Latinos living in District 8 or District Precinct 8 or Precinct 100. It is very possible that they have different perspectives by where they live. So what we're trying to do is come up with a map that meets these various elements and it preserves existing communities of mutual or related interest. And they may or may not be Latino.
Okay, well then everyone should, are you saying that everyone has to be a farmer to be out in the...
I'm not saying that at all.
Okay, so we don't all have similar interests, obviously, right? So there's only, I mean, I understand what the law says, but it doesn't, I mean, some of those people work out at Hanford, right? Some of the people that live in the North County work out at Hanford. So again, you know, we can't, there's only so much you can do there. What we're really trying to address here is to make sure that the Latino voice is not watered down. And the only way to do that is with demographics, so.
Hi, once again. My name is Jose Mendoza. Like I mentioned, I grew up here and I've seen the growth of Pasco, and I've kind of had a feel, and it looks like people have a affinity for wanting to live in West and North Pasco. And I wonder if this has been taken into account when thinking about the new maps, because it may seem that we may draw a map and then we may be in the same situation again when Northwest Pasco blows up in terms of population growth. Just today, I read an article about hundreds of stores being planned for West Pasco, and that seems like it would increase the population of that district or that region significantly. So I'm just wondering if that's being taken into consideration when drawing these maps, so we're not in the same situation very shortly again.
Good evening. My name is Anna Ruiz Kennedy. I would like to suggest to give for tomorrow's forum or listening session, if you could present more data so that it doesn't create all this confusion. And if the demographer, I assume that's your position, you could explain a little bit how you came up with the maps, so it would clear out some of the confusion that is happening right now. When I ran in last year, and when I would show this map to anyone, as we're trying to draw out what is going to be, what was going to be the precinct or the district that I was going to be running. Anyone that saw this map, they said, this is so gerrymandered. This just doesn't make sense. And when we explain, okay, we have primary and we have general, they again just like that. This is just not possible. How is it that we are still right now allowing this? And I said, well, this is the process. The city of Yakima went through this process. The city of Pasco went through this process. The county of Yakima went through this process, and it has been up to the commissioners to make those changes. They've been wanting to postpone it, but it's something that needs to happen. So those are my 2 points. If tomorrow, when you at the beginning of your meeting, if you could present a little bit more information, so that when people come and give their input, they can make a better decision and give you better information. So that's my participation today. Thank you.
If there's no further comments, this meeting is adjourned.